present Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Aimi MacDonald in just a minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And as you've just heard, we welcome back to fill the fourth chair, or the ladies' chair, whichever way you look at it, Aimi MacDonald. And once again, she's going to try and pit her wits against our three regular and experienced male players of the game. And once again, I'm going to ask them to speak, if they can, for just a minute on some unlikely subject, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card which is in front of me. And let us begin the show this week with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, can you talk on my exuberance? What a delightful subject to begin the show with, and will you talk on it now for 60 seconds, starting now?
Quite appropriate for me, because recently I had a nasty pain and I went to a gentleman who removed it, and I sprang into the street very exuberant and cried out, Denmark is all we can say, take one look and throw it away, and no people got this, oh, what's something rotten, oh, hoist up your skirts and fly, this is my alibi, and all the joyful thoughts that flew through my mind with lyric coming and verses and quatrains, and as Shakespeare says, the remembered snatches of old tunes. It's that old Demosthenes. Oh, the blood was flowing, my adrenaline reeling through the veins, and people passing by said, "Here, you all right?" And I was not deterred, kept right onto the bus stop, flew on the bus, went on the top deck, and...
Clement Freud...
Oh, it's a cheek, isn't it? It really is a nerve. I come all the way from King's Cross.
Well, you may have
What's the basis of his challenge?
We will hear if you'll give him a chance,
Oh,
Kenneth.
sorry.
6 seconds to go. Clement's got him with a challenge. And what is it, Clement?
2 buses. Bus stop and bus.
Oh, yes. How tough you are. Another 6 seconds, you'd have got 2 points and a resounding round of applause. But, Clement, that is a correct challenge, so you gain a point. And the subject, you have 6 seconds to go on. My exuberance, starting now.
I am, of course, pretty well known for my exuberance.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation is a complete lie.
I think, Kenneth, he very generously fed you a cue there for you to be able to come in beautifully like that, because I entirely agree with you, he's not well known for his exuberance. So we give you a point, Kenneth, for a correct challenge, and for once... What's that?
There was a rider.
I don't mind whether it was a rider or not. You are not very exuberant, Clement.
I was going to explain where I was well known for my exuberance.
All right, I've made a decision. I'm going to stick by it. And for once, Kenneth's got in with only 2.5 seconds to go, which is very unusual for Kenneth. So we give him a point and the correct challenge, and 2.5 seconds starting now.
I was so exuberant on this show, I once took my shirt off and the audience cried out in delight.
Well, at the end of that round, there's absolutely no doubt about it, Kenneth Williams has a commanding lead over everybody else. In fact, hardly anybody else has spoken yet. Clement Freud, will you begin the next round, please? The subject is the small shopkeeper. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
The small shopkeeper is likely to be a man of less than 5'9", which is the average size for managers or employees in such emporia. Alternately, the phrase could be referring to the size of his shop. For instance, a place which is 18 cubic yards or 93 square feet, let alone 463 inches by half a fathom, could possibly...
Aimi MacDonald has challenged.
A repetition.
Of what?
Well, he keeps talking about some form of size.
Well, that's a delightful challenge, Amy, but he's trying to illustrate to us the small shopkeeper.
Yes, he's talking about 18 such and such and
yes, but if you'd said, of course, that you couldn't measure a shop by a fathom...
Why not?
Because it would be underwater and the shopkeeper would be drowned.
Thank you, Peter, to help me out. Actually, I think, Amy, it was an incorrect challenge because he was trying to illustrate by size the small shopkeeper, and not quite devious enough. So, Clement, you keep the subject. If it's a wrong challenge, you have 32 seconds left. The small shopkeeper starting now.
I knew a shopkeeper who was 6'3", but went on all fours.
Peter Jones has challenged.
He has mentioned foot before.
Yes,
when he was
the other
giving
one
us
was
the measurements.
5 foot something.
Oh, he's sharp and he's straight out the knife box. Watch him this week, mate.
Peter, a correct challenge. So you now have 27 seconds on the small shopkeeper starting now.
Well, I'm very much on his side, and he should be encouraged. We've got several splendid ones.
Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
Sadism.
So on what basis in the rules of the game do you challenge
It's
Clement?
bad enough being a small shopkeeper without having Peter Jones on your side.
An incorrect challenge, but a lovely thought. 23 seconds on the small shopkeeper, Peter, starting now.
The great thing about him is that he is human. You can talk to him.
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
What deviation? The subject is a small shopkeeper, and he's saying the great thing about it. I mean, how can it be great if he's a small shopkeeper?
He said the great
Great
thing...
oaks from little acorns grow.
Is that a filthy crack?
He said the great thing about the small shopkeeper is something else. And that was the point he made, that he's not deviating from the subject. And so he keeps it, and there are 19 seconds on the subject starting now.
He's got interesting comments to make on what is happening in the neighborhood. And he can tell you things about the neighbors. If you ask him, you can discuss...
Aimi MacDonald is challenged.
A deviation. He stopped talking about the shopkeeper.
Oh, no, Amy. He's
shop.
definitely talking about the shopkeeper and what he says in the neighborhood, I'm afraid. I have to be accurate. There are 10 seconds left with Peter on the small shopkeeper, starting now.
He's very obliging. If he doesn't have it in stock, he will offer to get it for you, and does. Now, these big places, they don't do anything of the kind. They're run by computers.
Obviously, the small shopkeeper is a friend of Peter Jones because he gained him a considerable number of points in that round. Clement Freud and Kenneth Williams are equal in second case with 2 points. Aimi MacDonald has yet to score, but she's now going to talk to us on the subject of blushing. And you did just a moment ago so beautifully, Amy. You have 60 seconds on it, starting now.
This actually is a very interesting...
Peter Jones has challenged before she started.
Well, I want to just make a false challenge so that Amy can have a point to be going on with. I think it'll encourage her, you know.
Peter, I must point out to you that last time Aimi MacDonald was with us, she won. She beat you convincingly.
Yeah, and you want to stop sucking up to all this. Just trying to get well in.
Yes, only the chairman's allowed to suck up to the lady contestant who arrives.
It was a very nice thought, you must agree.
Oh, yes, and you've
Yes.
got a point for it, too.
Does he do that to all the ladies?
No, only to you.
Oh.
So he's put you right off your stroke, too, I bet. It's all very clever
And I'm
tactics.
blushing.
Amy, you have 59 and a half
describe it.
seconds. 59 and a half seconds on blushing, starting now.
As I was saying, this is something I just heard about, actually. If you stand in front of a mirror with nothing on, it's terribly interesting because you can see where your blush begins. It's somewhere around the diaphragm area, and it creeps up through the chest, over the shoulders, up the neck, and into the cheeks.
Kevin Freud has challenged.
Nothing much was happening. I was trying to keep the show going.
No.
Or hesitation, I think it's called.
She was waiting for the blush to creep up. That was what it was. It certainly crept with great rapidity, I'm afraid, and you did hesitate. So, Clement, I agree with your challenge. 35 seconds on blushing, starting now.
I saw a shop window the other day in which there was a notice which said, blushing, ? Come to the Wigmore Hall every other Thursday. I felt this was a very strange request because to come in alternate weeks on the 4th day of the 7-day span, I repeated.
Peter, you managed to get in first.
Oh, did I? Hesitation.
Hesitation, yes, he was going so magnificently you couldn't believe he had paused. Peter, I agree with your challenge. You have a point, you have 10 seconds, and you have blushing starting now.
It's something you don't see very often nowadays. I suppose in the permissive society, less things cause people's blood to rush to their faces than used to.
Was speaking then when the whistle went, so he gained the extra point. And by the way, if you don't already know it, the whistle does tell us that 60 seconds is up, and if you haven't already been told in a letter, Ian Messiter blows the whistle for us. Kenneth Williams, will you begin the next round? The subject, Sporus. You nod. Fine, you must know something about it. 60 seconds.
I didn't quite hear. What was it again?
Sporus.
Not your subject. Wash your ears out, mate. Nerd.
Well, if I don't find out from him what you're talking about, I'll never know.
Oh, thank you. Shut up. What a nerd. You want to shut up, you... We all know his friends are out front tonight, don't we? He pays them.
It's a great show tonight.
Goes up and down the pew, he does. Then you're not cold, are you? I'll get you in the warm. I saw him saying to a woman, I'll get you in the warm. Outside here.
Yes, it was a bit embarrassing as he already had Aimi MacDonald in the warm here as well. Right, all the knives are out, the jackets will be off soon. Kenneth, will you begin on Sporus, starting now?
Well, there are two people to whom one can attribute this name. I suppose historically it rightly belongs to the effeminate favourite of the Emperor Nero. They got married in Corinth. This boy had a wig on, and nobody knew it wasn't the real thing. He said it was an incredible likeness to Poppaea, who, of course, was the wife in bygone days. It was also the name Sporus, which was used by Pope to satirise Lord Harvey, who was then a minister in the government of the day, in a thing called the Epistle to Dr. Arbuthnot, which contains some it's absolutely true, interesting lines, including a marvellous couplet about who breaks a butterfly upon a wheel, which is really what's been happening to me on this show. I've been treated like a load of rubbish.
Started with the subject, he finished with it without being interrupted, though Peter did challenge just on the whistle. He only gets a point for speaking when the whistle went, an extra point for speaking without being interrupted, and obviously Ian Mester thought of the subject specially for him because he's well informed. Everything he said was correct, except for the bit about the butterfly. And that was devious, and I'm sure Peter challenged, but a second or half a second too late. Clement Freud, will you begin the next round? And the subject is My Cellar. 60 seconds starting now.
My cellar contains an unusual assortment of rats, mice, butterflies, cockroaches, wine, and beetles. Also bottles of cider, crates of beer, and a ton...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation.
I would certainly agree.
I would, too.
Yes. There are 45 seconds on My Cellar, Peter, starting now.
We haven't got very much in our cellar. The plaster's falling off the walls and from the ceiling so that the rafters are not obscured any longer. And there's dirt on the floor, I regret to say, plus a number of things that we've thrown out of the upper part of the house, like old cardboard boxes and bits of raffia dress material.
Aimi MacDonald has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, I would agree.
I did hesitate
you
there,
have a point for a correct challenge, and you have 23 seconds on My Cellar, starting now.
In my cellar, I unfortunately have the most enormous spiders. They're about 8 inches in diameter and really quite ugly. In order to swat one of those, one can't get too close because...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
The whole thing is deviation. There are no spiders in a cellar that are 8 inches in diameter.
How do you know? You've never
I happen to know the species of spiders that are popular in Great Britain, and it doesn't include anything that size apart from what's in the zoological
that's
department.
not true.
It's true.
Well, you
I've
can't
been to the
justify
zoo.
it,
I've
what
seen
you're
the
saying
biggest
is
ones they've
correct.
got. 8 inches in diameter. Who ever
I
heard
don't
of it?
mean the body.
You mean from
You
leg
said 8
to leg?
inches in diameter.
Yes, well, the whole thing with its legs and
Well,
everything.
even a tarantula right out, dear, is only 3 inches.
Is this your cellar in Caracas,
Listen,
Amy?
a tarantula come right out of a load of bananas at me, so I happen to know.
Actually, Aimi, he is correct. That's a huge spider, which you would never get in this country.
She's told lies. Look at her face.
Right.
Lies. Gone red, yes, you can see.
She's actually helped me out because she lifted up the ashtray.
They're about that big. What's that?
I would say
An
6
ashtray.
inches.
Honestly,
Kenneth, I agree with your challenge, so you have 8 seconds on My Cellar, starting now.
My cellar is 2 things, actually, the salt and the pepper, and invaluable they are. Oh, the joy of a boiled egg and a bit of salt on it.
Kenneth Williams was then speaking when the whistle went. He got the extra point.
So I'm in the lead.
No.
So I'm in the lead now, right?
You are leading Clement Freud.
What do you mean by that?
You're behind Peter Jones, who's way in the lead, and has been ever since the second round.
Something funny's going on here.
Aimi MacDonald, will you begin the next round? The subject is my lot. Will you talk about my lot starting now?
On my lot, there are things about 4 inches in diameter. Crawl from plant to plant. And end up in a
Clement
tray.
Freud is challenged.
Repetition of
I
plant.
didn't hear anybody buzz.
I know his buzz. He's got a very silent buzzer, Clement Freud has. He presses his buzzer very silently, so you hardly hear it. He sort of sneaks in with his challenges. What is it, Clement?
Repetition.
Of what?
Plant to plant.
Yes, I know. Rather unfair, wasn't it? She hardly got
Oh,
going.
yes, we were talking about that before, day to day and all that, yes.
Yes, what a pity. All right, Clement, I must be accurate with the rules of the game. You have a point, you have 51 seconds. My lot, starting now.
My lot is a particularly unenviable one because I make decent challenges and am permanently overridden by a man who calls himself chairman for some unaccountable reasons employed by the British Broadcasting Corporation to make them look an idiot.
Aimi MacDonald has challenged.
I can't hear him, actually.
Amy, I
I
wouldn't
think
mind if you could...
deafness
I
is a
wouldn't...
certain...
It's very unfair. He
never
and
yet
his buzzer
been-
are
Should have her on
inaudible.
the show. She's deaf. She can't hear. I've ever on. I don't know.
Amy,
Put it on the show.
Amy, quiet, Amy, don't say anything, because no matter what your challenge would have been, I would give it to you after the things he's been saying about the chairman. So, Amy, you have a point, because Because the chairman occasionally can use the unique situation that he's in, and he can overrule it and say, Aimi MacDonald has a point, and there are 35 seconds on my lot starting now.
There are bushes and trees, a garage, some earth, a summer house, a little crazy paving path.
Clement Freud came in first.
And a long pause.
Yes. But she didn't say it, alas, she just did it. So you have 25 seconds on my lot, Clement, starting now.
In Australia, where I was once privileged to visit and travelled from Perth to Sydney, my lot was incredible because the entire Antipodean people took against me right from my first encounter with...
Aimi MacDonald has challenged.
He's always putting himself down, have you noticed?
Yes, I have. Actually, he was putting me down last time. I had noticed that as well. So what is your challenge, Aimi?
Well, I just think it's sad, because...
Give Aimi MacDonald a point, because I do think it's very sad that he puts the chairman down as well as...
You're handing round points like a man with no arms, you are. You want to stick to the game. He's gone red. Look at his face. He's gone red. He knew he was doing wrong. He knew he was doing wrong. Should have had that blushing before, shouldn't we?
I'm allowed to...
Yeah, it's gone red. Look at him. He's blushing like that.
If I was to decide to do the same to you, people do. Have you noticed? You've just got to go up to someone and say, you're blushing, you know. Oh, look, you're blushing, and they do. All the audience says, Clement Freud, you're not blushing because you can't.
Because I don't have any points.
You have 7 seconds for an incorrect... you have an incorrect challenge, a point, and 7 seconds on my lot, starting now.
Last week I took my lot to the bank and asked for a receipt, at which the manager was exceedingly annoyed and said, how dare you demand any...
Freud was then speaking when the whistle went. He's increased his position behind Peter Jones, who's still in the lead.
I've increased my position.
Yes, you've increased your position.
No, we're all friends. Now, look,
I
that's
know
no...
we are.
Oh, no, let no discord mar the harmony of this gathering. Oh, I'm full of joy and all this lovely... But no, there's no malignity. No, I assure you.
I think you're doing a great job, Nicholas. I still am in the lead, aren't I?
Peter, you're definitely in the lead, and after Kenneth's last remarks, the next subject could not be more apt. It is cheek.
Ah.
And we get plenty of that on this program, so Peter, will you talk on it for 60 seconds, starting now?
Not an easy word to define. Perhaps it would be better to think of an example. It's exemplified, really, by the fly crawling up the leg of the elephant intent on rape. Now, this is an arrogant situation for an insect to be in. Because,
I've never known a thought take so long long to penetrate an audience. It took them as long as it took the fly to climb out the leg of the ant. But during that long pause, Kenneth Williams challenged.
Well, I thought he
Hesitated. Yes, he did. He more than hesitated, and well, he might. Kenneth, I agree with your challenge. You have 31 seconds on cheek, starting now.
Well, it's exemplified when somebody interrupts me in the middle of the flow. I have what is known as
Kenneth Freud is challenged. Why?
Repetition of I have what is known as.
Well, I had to because the laugh drowned it, you see.
I know, but the trouble is...
Excuse me, I challenged as well. We're not getting mixed up, are we?
You keep on doing it wrong, dear.
Amy, there's one thing I can say with certain. We could never mix you up with Clement Freud.
They are very quiet. I can hardly hear them. I can't hear his buzzer. And the lighting isn't too good. I've only got your word for it. They're over there.
MacDonald and Peter Jones press with more strength. Clement, can you press more strongly just to show that you can make a noise? Thank you.
You see, I didn't hear that the last time.
No, will you please do that in future to help not only the listeners but also Amy MacDonald and Peter Jones, because they can't see you so far away. And what was the challenge now? Oh, yes, I have to give it to you, I'm afraid. You must try and keep going, even if you've entertained them as well, okay?
I appreciate that, Nicholas.
Oh, you are. Clement, you have a point. You have 20 seconds on cheek, starting now.
Midway between my chin and the right-hand side of my forehead, you would be very likely to find the center of my cheek.
Amy MacDonald has challenged. Why?
Well, he's talking like he's only got one cheek.
He sometimes looks as if he's only got one cheek as well. But I'm afraid he has got two cheeks, and even if he only had one cheek, as long as he's talking about cheek, he's not deviating from the subject on the card. So he has another point, and he has 12 seconds to keep going on cheek, starting now.
To go up to the Prime Minister and accuse him of spending the government money on purchasing small boats with which he doesn't sail particularly well would be an act...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I didn't realise what he was going to say after that. I didn't realise he was qualifying it. I was going to say it's a disgrace to say such a thing, but of course I didn't realise he was qualifying, so I withdraw the challenge.
I don't even know what challenge you're withdrawing.
Oh, well, good.
But the awful thing is, Kenneth, this is the last round, I've just been informed, because we have no more time. There are 2 seconds to go, and if Clement Freud gets any more points, he'll win, and I don't want him to win this week.
Well, I'm sorry, it was an incorrect challenge.
Well, I have to give him a point then, and he keeps going for 2 seconds on cheek, starting now.
Cheek of a very high order.
Play just a minute, so let me give you the final score at the end of the show this week. And Amy MacDonald finished in 4th place. She was blushing a little, but she did very well, and we loved having you with us, Amy, again. Kenneth, you did not quite so well. You were in 3rd place, a little ahead of Amy, but we always enjoy having you with us. And Peter Jones, it's a great joy to have you with us as well.
It's a joy to have everyone on this.
Yeah. You were in 2nd place when at one time you looked to be our certain winner, and at last challenge put Clement Freud into the lead, and our winner is Clement Freud. We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.
We present Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Andree Melly in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. Well, once again, we have 4 experienced players of the game, and I'm going to ask them to speak if they can for just 1 minute on some unlikely subject, without, of course, hesitation, repetition, or deviating from the subject which is written on the card in front of me. And again, according to how well they do it, they will gain points, or their opponents will. And let us begin the show this week with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, always a good one to start any show, but can you talk this week on relativity for 60 seconds, starting now?
It just so happens that this is a favourite subject of mine. I think it would be true to say that we associate the name Einstein invariably with the word relativity, because it was his theory which out-Newtons, so to speak, the previously held ideas on this subject. You see,
Peter Jones has challenged you.
Repetition of subject.
I agree with your challenge of repetition, Peter. You therefore gain a point. You take over the subject. There are 33 and 1/2 seconds left. Relativity starting now.
Well, I'm not going to challenge anything that Kenneth Williams has said about Einstein or relativity. I think he put it extremely well. It was unfortunate that he did repeat this one word, but apart from that, I think he got the facts more or less right. Now, this was perhaps the biggest contribution that anyone had made to scientific thought in this century. Now, the atomic bomb and the hydrogen, same thing, was also...
Kenneth Williams...
Deviation. Neither of these subjects are to do with the theory of relativity. The atom bomb and the hydrogen bomb, what's he on about? He's discussing nuclear fission. Nothing to do with it.
Yes, but the problem is...
There's no but the problem is...
Yes, there's the problem.
I should have it back. He pinched it off me and I hadn't even got down to discussing it.
He just said he thought you did it brilliantly.
Yeah, well, I hadn't.
He can't accept a compliment.
It goes in one ear with him and out the other.
I agree with your... I think you have a very good challenge in the fact that he's now gone to the nuclear fission and so forth.
Yes, that's
but
right,
at the same time, who is to say...
who indeed?
Yes.
Except you. Oh, no better than you to say, love. You're a lovely
Einstein's...
chairman. You know your onions, eh? No flies on him.
Well, all right. I think this audience has just freshly arrived. I'm sure that they're all keen to hear you go a little longer on relativity. So
They may not be clued up on relativity.
No, that's what I'm anxious to do.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, I'd like you to carry on.
Thank you.
I'm quite happy.
Well, that's very kind. You helped me out of a difficult problem, Peter. You're being very generous, very sporting, very gentlemanly, because it's a debatable decision. But I give it the benefit of the doubt to Kenneth. A point and 3 seconds, starting now.
Well, the Einstein theory discards the
Clement Freud
conception
challenge you.
of time.
Repetition of Einstein.
Oh, dear, oh, dear.
Clement Freud, you get the point and the subject, and there's 1 second left, starting now.
Einstein.
You may just have heard the whistle being blown by Ian Messiter. It does tell us that 60 seconds is up. Whoever speaks when the whistle is blown gains an extra point. This occasion it was Clement Freud who has a lead at the end of that round. Peter Jones, will you start the next round? The subject is being thorough. Will you talk on that now for just 1 minute, starting now?
This is something that you really can't be too particular about. You must get all the information you can, make a study of the subject, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Go to a library, borrow books if you can, get postal courses, find out from friends whether they know anything about it. And then, when you have acquired as much knowledge as you possibly can...
Andree Melly has challenged.
I think there were 2 knowledges.
I
there weren't.
remember.
No,
I don't remember another knowledge.
Several acquired, but not 2 knowledges.
Yes, it was too late for the acquired now, but the knowledge was there. You had this impression of great knowledge being acquired,
yes.
So you thought he repeated it.
Yes,
he didn't. I disagree with the challenge, Andree, and there are 38 seconds on being thorough, starting now.
And then get all the ingredients around you in the room, clean it up, and really sit down with the books that you have...
Peter, Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of books.
Yes, I'm afraid you did have a book before, and so we've had books before. Being thorough is now with you, Clement, and there are 29 seconds left, starting now.
What I like to be really thorough about is my boots. I put them on every morning after taking them off each night, and I lace up each shoe, both the left...
Peter Jones is challenged.
Well, it's boots and shoes. He can't
Yes, if he
have
puts
them.
his boots on, how can he lace up his shoes?
Well, he might, but I mean, it would be very eccentric.
Very devious. I agree with your challenge, Peter. You have 15 seconds on being thorough, starting now.
I, on the other hand, place my footwear at the bottom of the stairs, and beside them I put...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, only
Hesitation,
just.
yes,
It was a tough one, but I think it was just enough to be hesitation. And there are 7.5 seconds on being thorough with you, Clement, starting now.
Pants, vest, shirt, tie.
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
This is an inventory of clothing. It's nothing to do.
It might
Nothing to
be
do
an
with the
inventory
subject.
of clothing, but it might have
The subject
something
is
to...
being thorough, dear. Do
Well,
take
we
a look
don't
at
know.
it.
He's
This is
only
what
been
he's
going
doing.
for 2 or 3 seconds, so we
Well, he
don't
only
know.
got 5 more seconds to go. He hasn't time to prove that he's talking about...
Precisely. A very
Exactly.
good
Thank
point,
you.
Peter. Yes.
But Peter wasn't challenging, you were.
Yes, but I was just seconding his challenge.
Yeah, you going to third it, Andree?
Yes.
Doesn't make any difference. I disagree with it.
Right.
There are 4.5 seconds with you, Clement, on being thorough, starting now.
Read your book.
Andree Melly challenge.
Hesitation.
3.5 seconds. No, that's right. 3.5 seconds on being thorough with you, Clement, starting now.
Digest your homework with the utmost...
They're all trying the Clement Freud trick of getting in just before the whistle. On that occasion, it wasn't successful, Andree. Clement Freud increased his lead to have a commanding one at the end of that round. But, Andree, we're now going to hear from you, because it's your turn to begin. The subject is fillings. Would you talk on fillings for just 60 seconds, starting now?
His eyes were full of delight and his face was close to mine. My mouth was open at the time and he breathed, "You've got the most beautiful gold inlay I have ever seen." And he was absolutely right, because I may have pearly gates in the front, but at the back it's a kind of Aladdin's cave. It's the expensive kind, because I once got caught with a gold...
Clement Freud has challenged. Why?
2 kinds.
Yes, alas.
Kind.
So, Clement, you have the
I
subject.
think it's a mistake to have women on this show. I think I...
And the women think it's a mistake to have you on the show. There are 36 seconds with you, Clement, on fillings, starting now.
If you get 2 pieces of cake, then what you find between them is often known as a filling, whether it be butter or cream. If it contains nuts or pistachios, almonds or cherries, fruit of any kind whatsoever, sometimes refreshed with liqueur, at other times moistened with wine.
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
Well, I was going to say times, but of course the first was sometimes, so I'm absolutely ruined. One word,
As
isn't
you've
it, sometimes?
said before, you've been
Yes, what a
posted with
shame.
your
I'm sorry,
time.
Clement. I do apologise. Will you accept that apology?
Why do you have to apologise? He gets a point for a wrong challenge.
Yes, I will accept it.
He's accepted the apology, and he's got the subject. He has 15 seconds left. Filling, starting now.
If you grasp a chicken in your left hand and force some breadcrumbs into the middle of it...
Kenneth Williams has
That's
challenged.
complete deviation. The subject is fillings, not getting older chickens and...
Well, if you've got a chicken with your left
Dropping
hand,
the poor things.
if you've got a chicken in your left hand and force something into its inside, you'd certainly be filling it, wouldn't you? I don't think, really, to be quite fair, that he was deviating from the subject of the card filling. So,
But he
has-
did repeat about the putting it in the middle of the chicken,
Yeah.
because he
But
talked
that
about...
wasn't Kenneth's challenge, unfortunately.
No, but it is mine.
It's a bit late now because Kenneth got in first, and I have to be accurate.
Oh, I see.
What a pity.
I had no idea. I've never had any impression that you were accurate.
I will find an opportunity to get back at you on that one, Peter. There are 8 seconds left now with you, Clement, on filling, starting now.
This is especially true in the case of dead, late lamented, or deceased birds, because were they live...
All those horrible thoughts that Clement aroused in our minds with his fillings took him further into the lead at the end of that round. Kenneth Williams, will you begin the next round? The subject, Luxor, or Luxor as some people say. Would you talk on it for 60 seconds starting now?
Well, I don't know why they gave it to me. I suppose it's the one on the Nile they're referring to in Egypt. It used to be called Thebes in the ancient days. And there, of course, Amenhotep built the great temple to Amun. And many of the later rulers of Egypt put this...
Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
The repetition of Egypt.
I'm afraid so. You had Egypt more than once, yes. Ian Messiter gives you these lovely historical subjects, but alas, you often repeat the salient words in them. Clement, a correct challenge, 36 seconds on Luxor starting now.
I was very privileged to have been invited by the Egyptian tourist office to visit Luxor last Christmas, and I enjoyed it enormously, although the temperature was inclement, or to put it another way, in the high 90s. One of the most beautiful trips you can take is from Cairo down the River Nile to Luxor in a boat which...
Peter Jones is challenged.
I thought it was up the Nile.
I suppose it's the way you think. Yes, because you're going up to the...
No, you're going down to the...
You're going down on the map, but
That's
you're
right.
going up,
Yes.
up the river.
I was going down on the map.
What's that?
No, you're not on the map. You're on the river.
Going up the river.
On
It's
the
when
river.
you go up to Scotland or down to
And
Scotland.
not even the Egyptian tourist office can get you against the stream, you know. They can't.
If you're going from Cairo, you must be going upstream. Therefore, you must be going up the river and not. If you look at it on the map, you would appear to be going down. But I agree with Peter's challenge. You're actually going up because you're going upstream. Luxor is now with you, Peter, and there are 7 seconds left starting now.
Luxor is one of the many cities that the Egyptian Tourist Board has never invited me to. And I don't expect they probably ever will.
Was then speaking when the whistle went, and he has gained that point for doing so, and he is now very definitely in second place. Clement Freud is in a commanding lead. Andree, Melly and Kenneth Williams are hardly in it at the present moment. Peter, will you begin the next round? The subject, what I do in a crowded train. He's thinking about what he does in a crowded train. I've given him time for thought, and will you now talk on the subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
What I do in a crowded train, not very much, because, of course, it's terribly dangerous. When I find myself on a tube which is crowded at the rush hour, and I'm standing holding on to the strap, and I find that my nose is a few inches away from the nasal organ of someone else, and they happen to reveal that they've watched me on television the night before and didn't enjoy it, I do find it acutely embarrassing. And I have to read all the advertisements about blackcurrant pastils and curious office jobs that are always being advertised on these conveyances. Now, when one's hands are occupied with the strap, one has to...
They're enjoying it. Andree, Melly, you challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I did. Yes, I was...
Peter, I have to agree with Andree's challenge, so there are 12 seconds with you, Andree, on what I do in a crowded train, starting now.
What I do in a crowded train is something that Peter Jones, Kenneth Williams, and Clement Freud couldn't possibly manage. I look pregnant. And then...
Peter Jones has challenged.
I frequently look pregnant. I've tried slimming biscuits, but there's no question about it. I do have this enormous swelling. And I do have dizzy spells early in the morning.
Well, you see,
Particularly when I get up terribly quickly.
What a difficult decision for him to make, because while we all know it is impossible for Peter to be pregnant, who cannot say that...
Yes, that I'll grant you that.
It is possible for him, perhaps, to say that he looks pregnant. In fact, sometimes people do say, jocularly, you don't half look pregnant.
But they do, yes. And they're not being all that jocular very often.
No, perhaps they're not. All right, Peter, I think we will give you that challenge, because it was a very good one. And you've got in magnificently with only 2 seconds to go. What I do in a crowded train, starting now.
It gives a new meaning to that phrase.
So Peter Jones was then speaking when the whistle went. He gained the extra point. Andree Melly got a point in that round. She's now got 1 in this game. And Kenneth Williams has got 1 point. Clement Freud, will you begin the next round? The subject, the family economy size. There's a nice subject to talk on, and will you go on it for 60 seconds starting now?
The family economy size is a name given to a large packet in which what you spill you don't pay for. It's really just...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation, in which what you spill you can't pay for. I mean, this makes no sense whatsoever. In which what you spill you can't... I have never heard anything.
Actually, Kenneth,
This large packet in which what you spill... I mean, in which...
If you say it like that, in which what you spill, it does sound very devious.
Of course
But
it
if you
is
say
devious,
in which...
grammatically devious, I'm afraid. So therefore the subject goes to me. How many seconds left? How many seconds?
I think
Put yourself
that he
together.
was
How many seconds?
Oh, shut up. I think that he when keeping going under pressure, it is difficult sometimes with grammar.
I
tell
wasn't
you
pressing
what,
him. He had no pressure on him at all.
I know you were very generous to him a little while ago. I think he will be generous to you now because he has a commanding lead, and you've only 1 little point there. So we'll let you have the benefit of the doubt. And the subject, the family economy size, Kenneth, 50 seconds left, starting now.
The family economy size should be just 2 children. The others...
Clement Freud is challenged.
I'd like him to have another little point.
Oh, lovely fellow. No training whatsoever.
What you're going to give him the family economy size point. You have 46 seconds on the family economy size, Kenneth, starting now.
You hear a lot today about the family explosion, and there is a great deal of apprehension that sooner or later there won't be a cupboard in which you can stuff any of your progeny or your proclivities, depending on your inclinations in that direction. Now, if you've got a gomphosis, then you're really in the...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of gomphosis. He did say it earlier on, didn't he?
He regularly says gomphosis all
Yes,
the time.
I thought he'd said it earlier.
Yes.
I have not mentioned it on this show. This audience have never heard gomphosis before, have you?
No, nobody's heard gomphosis
No, that
before.
was a mistake on my part. I misheard it. It sounded very like it.
So Kenneth gets another point for a wrong challenge. 14.5 seconds, the family economy size, starting now.
And the chair occupied by the head of the family, traditionally known as the carver because of its arms.
Peter Jones has challenged.
A repetition of family.
Yes, we've had family.
It's on the title, you great nit! You're allowed to quote the title, aren't you, you
The
great
title?
fool?
But
Pull yourself together. He's gone funny and easy.
The title is Just a Minute.
No.
The subject is the family economy size, which you can repeat.
There you are, you fool. The
Wait
subject.
a minute, you fool.
Not fragmentarily.
I...
You can't fragment it, can you?
Well, he has used the word family outside the context of the subject on the
Twice.
card. And now he has repeated family.
I know he has.
So
and
therefore,
I am
agree
awarded.
with... It's all right, though. I agree with you. So you have a point for a correct challenge, Peter, and you have 11 seconds, the family economy size, starting now.
I've taught my children mathematics by taking out the contents from these large packets and weighing them and working out how much it costs. And you often find that they're much more expensive than the smaller packets.
The fun that Peter Jones must have at home. But, Andree, we're now going to hear from you because it's your turn to begin. The subject is secrets. 60 seconds on that, Andree, starting now.
Secrets are really very frustrating things. The whole point about them is you're supposed to keep them, and the great fun is to go right away and tell them to somebody else. For children, secrets are very dramatic. I remember having hot, sticky faces pressed up against my ear, my hair pulled back, and a whispery voice going and telling you that Patsy Wilde hasn't got her knickers on, and don't never go and tell her. No, you say, and cross your heart, and off you go right away to that Nicholas infant and tell her what you've been told.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of tell. She has...
Yes, she told, that's right,
yes.
and then she tells again. Peter, you listened well and you got in with a good challenge, and there are 20 seconds on secrets starting now.
Well, I'm not going to reveal mine until I can't get any other kind of work. And then I'm going to write a book about all the people I've met in this business. And shall probably reveal the secret of Kenneth Williams and what we did behind...
Andree Melly.
There was a very kind of hesitation.
Yes, well, that was just a tactful pause. I mean, it was...
Yes, because he thought he might have to reveal it, so he paused. Yes. But you were not allowed to pause in this game, Peter, so Andree has another point, and there are 3 seconds on secrets, Andree, starting now.
Grown-ups like to have them, too. They start by saying...
Andree was then speaking when the whistle went, and she has moved forward at the end of that round, but she's still in 4th place. Kenneth's in 3rd place. Peter's in a very good 2nd place now, but Clement Freud is still in the lead. And Kenneth, will you begin the next round? What a lovely subject that Ian Mester's thought of for you. High spirits. High spirits, Kenneth. Will you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, I suppose this could refer to having a drop of something or other on top of Everest, or it could mean being excessively joyous and full of an infectious joie de vivre, bonhomie, or what you will. Will-o'-the-wisp sometimes has been referred to as this kind of thing. Of course, there is a spiritualistic attitude, I believe, whereby they manifest these things, ectoplasmic, and all stuff goes all over the stinking place till you feel as though someone's brought their haddock for breakfast, you know, into the room with them, and the smell, it can be atrocious. I was at one once, and it was absolutely revolting, because this woman said she had a message from the other side, you see, and she kept saying, "You will cross water." I thought, well, that could mean anything. I'm standing over a puddle, couldn't I? I mean, beautiful. All this, like, your lucky sandwich, filling your salmon and shrimp. Oh, your lucky stone is gold. I thought, well, that could mean it.
Clement Freud has challenged you.
Repetition of lucky.
Yes, this woman told you too many lucky things. Your lucky puddle and your lucky sandwich spelling and all that. Clement Freud, you got in very cleverly just before the whistle. There are only 2.5 seconds left. High spirits starting now.
Whiskey, gin, rum, brandy.
I'm afraid we have no more time to play just a minute. We do hope you've enjoyed it, because we've had... Have you enjoyed it in the audience? No. Oh, good. I would now just, if you just keep very quiet for a minute, I would like to ask our listeners if they've enjoyed it. Did you enjoy it, listeners? Thank you for answering back down your telephones, listeners. See them all shouting at the wirelesses, and you took up the call. Ladies and gentlemen, I now must give you the final score. I must say that's the funniest thing that's ever happened, asking the listeners and you all in the audience shout. Andree Melly, after winning magnificently last time you were with us, you finished up with 3 points. We love to have you here. You do jolly well, but you didn't do quite so well this week. Kenneth did quite well, but all those Luxors and things, you know. And Peter Jones, you did very well. You did very well indeed. You got 10 points. You did jolly well. But nobody... No, it wasn't worth a clap. But Clement Freud is once again the winner, Clement Freud. Ladies and gentlemen, we do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Simon Brett.
present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And once again, I'm going to ask our four clever panelists to speak, if they can, for just 1 minute on some unlikely subject without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card which is written in front of me. And of course, according to how well they do this, they will gain points or their opponents will. We'll begin the show this week with Sheila Hancock. Sheila, can you talk about my favourite drink for 60 seconds, starting now?
I can only say that whenever I am in foreign parts, the one thing I long for more than anything else in the world is a cup of tea. That may sound horribly English of me, but it's absolutely true. One never gets a proper one of those when you're abroad. There is, in fact, only one way to make it, and that is by warming the pot first, putting in 1 teaspoonful for each...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of tea.
Spoonful, teaspoonful.
Tea.
No, teaspoonful.
No, she said teaspoonful. Sheila, you have my favourite drink still with 32 seconds left, starting now.
For each person and 1 for the pot. You then have to make absolutely certain that the water...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of pot.
Yes. Clement, you have a correct challenge this time, so you've gained a point and the subject, and there are 25 seconds left on my favourite drink, starting now.
My favourite drink is one which I judge to have won the Liberal Party competition for summer aperitifs some time ago, and it consists of champagne and fresh peaches, which are liquidized and added to the previously mentioned effervescent drink, also a modicum of pear brandy, and the result is topped with a sprig of thyme and some bay leaf.
The more he went on, the more intoxicated we all felt.
Are there any more ingredients? Because we want to make it. So is there anything you've left out?
Yes, but by the time you started to taste it, you go for cover. Clement Freud, will you begin the next round, please? The subject is pests. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Pests are animals or people of whom others think that they have no right to live or are a disgrace to mankind. I don't, in this particular instance, want to point my finger of scorn at anyone in my immediate vicinity, and...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, I'm afraid there was, because everybody here realised that he must be talking about Kenneth Williams as he sits next to Clement, and Kenneth was reacting in such a hilarious way, completely dried Clement up. Oh, well, there's a horrendous pause. I appear to have made a delightful faux pas, but anyway, I agree with your challenge, Derek. You have the subject, and you have 38 seconds on pests, starting now.
Pests are one of those words that have been watered down through usage over the years. In fact, during the time of the plague, the pest cart was one which used to take away the bodies that were lying, decomposing in the house, and very unpleasant it was, and people used to go round sprays of resin and sing songs like Ring.
Can you answer the challenge? Why?
2 rounds.
Yes, he was speaking so quickly it was difficult to hear whether there were 2 or not, but I think there were.
They used to go round, and they were lying round.
Yes, they were lying around and
around and round.
Yes, but you were going
around and round are 2 different.
Yes, but you were going so quickly that it was too difficult to judge, and therefore I must give it...
Are we supposed to speak slowly?
No, but you're supposed to speak distinctly. Kenneth, you have the subject and 25 seconds on pests, starting now.
I'm not so sure that I want it, because it brings back to my mind.
Nimmo's challenge.
Deviation is speaking quickly.
That is not a correct challenge. Kenneth, you have another point, and you have 22 seconds on pests, starting now.
But the most horrible of these is the mosquito, and when I first arrived in Callyan, they said to me, "You are on sentry tonight." I went right along the perimeter, where I met another soldier, and exchanged words. Then this thing hit me, and I, in my nerves, lit a fag. Out of the shadows come this bloke and said, "Here, I'm smoking on duty." I said, "Oh, no, wait a minute." I smoked this fag.
He didn't want the subject, but he kept going magnificently to speak when the whistle went, gain the extra point, and definitely take the lead over all the others at the end of that round.
Quite right, too. How nice. Yes, I should have it.
And Kenneth, it's your turn to begin. Will you please talk on invitations for 60 seconds starting now?
These come on pasteboard or ivory cards, as they're sometimes known in the trade, and often look very grand indeed. There are some particular snobs who put them on the mantelpiece so that everyone knows what kind of grandeur they're to be involved in. I don't do anything of the kind, and most of the time I say, no thank you, I shall be busy, because I'm having this fag and a cup of tea and thinking about my next move. All of my life really could be called a complicated game of chess in which I move a queen or a bishop.
Sheila Hancock's challenge, why?
I think he's deviating. He's talking about his life, not about the invitation.
Yes, you've gone off invitation. You're talking about chess and the complications of your life now. They may have been triggered off by invitations, but you've got away from it.
Oh, well, let's see how marvellous she is discussing it then. Oh, let's hear the wonderful Miss Hancock, B.A. Oh, yes.
All right, she has 21 seconds to show us how wonderful she can be on invitation, Sheila, starting now.
Well, one person I wouldn't send one to is Kenneth Williams, for a start. All the invitations I get are not on pasteboard or ivory, whatever he said. I get people phoning me up and say, what about coming round with a bottle tonight? Which is the sum total of my grandeur, and I'm sure everybody else in this team, apart from our aloof friend over there.
Sheila Hancock was then speaking when the whistle went, so she gained that extra point, and now she has taken the lead.
That's what she was trying to do all along, didn't you see her game?
That's what you're all trying to do all along, get the lead and win.
That's all she's trying to do, she comes here to win. It's as if I come here at a sportsmanship, just having a go, but she's out there to get marks.
He is going mad, isn't he? It's harder every week. Goes off with his
I don't take
tangent.
my coat off yet, girl.
No, he's done his tiny top, and we've all enjoyed it. Derek Nimmo, we've come now to you. Your turn to begin. The subject, nerves. Can you talk to us for 60 seconds on that subject, starting now?
Nerves are something which most actors possess, particularly if they're involved in games like this. Kenneth Williams is one particular actor who gets on my nerves. That's beside the point, because
Kenneth Williams has challenged you, Derek.
That's invective. I'm not going to sit here and have invective.
What is your challenge? Invective?
Yes.
Well, there's no such challenge.
Oh, no, I meant repetition of nerves. He said nerves twice.
Your nerves is a subject on the card. Nerves is a subject on the card, so you can't have him on repetition, you can't have him on vective, you can't have him on deviation, so he has another point, and there are 49 seconds left on nerves. Derek, starting now.
the Chinese are very clever with their acupuncture. They shove little needles into your nerves, and by doing...
Sheila Hancock has challenged. Why?
I don't think it's been proved, in fact, that they do put them into the nerves. How acupuncture works hasn't yet
Without
been proved.
phoning up a woman who does it, I couldn't be sure, but my feeling is the same as yours. They don't push the needles into the nerves,
No,
they push them
just
into the flesh somewhere.
various spots, and they don't make
Anybody know anything about acupuncture in the audience who can help us out?
Oh, don't ask Ethel. She'll go on all night.
All right, I'm not certain, but I'm going to give you the best. Are you certain of that, Derek? No, quite right, Sheila. 42 seconds on nerves with you, Sheila, now, starting now.
When I worked with Kenneth Williams, was a gibbering bag of nerves, and I was so desperate that I tried hypnotism on the advice of a very well-known artiste. And I went along to this man, and he put a gold pencil up in front of my eyes and said, when I count 7, you will not be awake any longer.
Oh.
And he counted that number that I just said, and I was. But I felt so ashamed because somebody had said that only insensitive people can't be hypnotized. So I pretended that I was.
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
I think it's all about hypnotism rather than nerves.
Of course not. It's got to do with your sense of attraction, you're great in it. Go on, it's lovely. Go on then, yeah. What happened?
It is because of your nervous disposition or the nervous tension for which you're suffering, and will you shut up, Kenneth Williams, that makes you go to a hypnotist, which I think Sheila made quite clear. So she has another point and 9 seconds on nerves starting now.
Well, I was very keen to cure myself that while I was there. And anyway, this man, he then said, I am now
Derek
going
Nimmo's
to...
challenge you again.
You'll regret this because it's a good story.
You great fool, Nimmo. Fancy breaking it off
I'll
in
tell
this.
you afterwards,
Derek, what is your
then.
challenge?
Repetition of man, actually.
Yes, I'm afraid there was a repetition of man. He cleverly got in just before the whistle. 3 seconds left with you, Derek, on nerves starting now.
And sometimes at the end of one thing, one feels extraordinary tingling sensations.
Derek was then speaking when the whistle went. He gained the extra point, but he's still 1 point behind Sheila Hancock, who is still in the lead. Sheila Hancock, it's your turn to begin. The subject is fashion. Would you talk to us for 60 seconds on that subject, starting now?
It was very fashionable at that time to go to hypnotists, and after he'd waved his pencil at me, he then stuck a pin in me, and I was
Kenneth Williams, a challenge.
Well, deviation. The subject is fashions, and now she's on to hypnosis.
You won't let me finish this story, will you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realise you was on a story.
Oh. Finish your story, will you, Sheila?
Oh, it's very boring now I come to think of it, but I was pretending not to be hypnotised, and he stuck a pin in me, and I nearly shot through the roof. He said, you won't feel this because you're hypnotised, and of course I was pretending.
And you shall the aquapuncture.
I won't.
Aquapuncture.
Anyway, sorry, go on.
That was a correct challenge, Kenneth, so you have the subject. Thank you for finishing the story, Sheila.
It was fashionable to go
52 seconds for you now on fashion, Kenneth, starting now.
Well, actually, this is a subject Sheila Hancock should be... I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I said Hancock.
I know you shouldn't have.
But that's all right. And that's all right. Don't matter whether I said Hancock or not. Really, that's ridiculous.
I know.
Pedantry to a point of
Kenneth!
madness, isn't it?
Kenneth, if you make a slip like that, keep going. They may not challenge. Sometimes they're generous. Sometimes they're sporting.
Generous, this lot here? Oh.
Sometimes they don't even hear. But Clement, Freud, you have a correct challenge and a point in 47 seconds on fashion, starting now.
It used to be thought that Paris was the fashion capital of the world, but since those days, both Milan and New York have very good claims, and England, London, is coming into its own. You may think it devious to arrive at the tail which you left, but the shops in Oxford Street, let alone the boutiques in King's Road, Chelsea, not to mention the
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
I hesitate.
Yes, I think so. Not to mention, and he couldn't think what not to mention. So there are 21 seconds on fashion with you now, Derek, starting now.
As Lord Chesterfield...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Hesitation.
No, Derek, you have 19 seconds on fashion, starting now.
A man of parts and fashion is only seen to smile, but never heard to laugh. The Prince Regent, walking down St. James's, met one of the gentlemen that I was talking about, and he said, "Who's your fat friend?" to him, because it was a very nasty and rude thing.
Derek was then speaking when the whistle went. He gained that extra point. He has now gone into the lead ahead of Sheila Hancock at the end of that round. And Clement Freud, will you begin the next round, please? The subject is people like me. 60 seconds starting now.
People like me find it very difficult playing a game such as this, because one not only has to put up with the astonishingly bright decisions of the chairman, there's also a slight disadvantage being unable and unwilling, I would like to add, to perpetrate the sort of accidents and accents, which is really what I meant to have said, on the public, as Derek Nimmo, Sheila Hancock, and Kenneth Williams, who are all, I believe, members of Equity. And people like me because I'm so generally nice to them. I've never, ever said anything unpleasant to anyone in my entire life, and have no...
Sheila Hancock has
I really honestly can't believe that, because I've heard him be pretty nasty to you.
Yes. He never in his entire life said anything unpleasant to anybody. The number of times he said unpleasant things to me on this programme is enough for you to have more than 1 point, Sheila, but I can only give you one.
Depends on your definition of unpleasant, I suppose.
Yeah, but don't get the thing away from you. Get it back there. 16 seconds on people like me, starting now.
People like me are 5'8", have mousy hair, grey eyes, are moderately proportioned, have a pretty awful voice, and are maligned by everybody on this game. I never say very unpleasant.
Clement Freud challenge you then. Yes, well done, Clement. 2 seconds to go on people like me, starting now.
People like me because I'm so proud.
So Clement got some points on that round, and he's moved forward now just behind Sheila Hancock, who's just behind our leader, who is still Derek Nimmo, and Kenneth is still in 4th place. But they've all got a lot of points in this game. Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin another of these interesting subjects that Ian Messler thinks of for you, Albert Einstein. Can you talk about that great man for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, as the name gives us the clue, he was German-born, became an American national, and was famous in the field of nuclear physics, and, of course, outdates the Newtonian theory on gravitation, because he treats of it as a field rather than a force. That is the
theory of relativity. I would say something else about this chap, because when it was proved by the astronauts in their remarkable journey to the moon, much of what he had already predicted, they came to him and told him that, and he said, I knew all along. He didn't say it like that, but he actually said, I knew all along.
But Derek Nimmo challenged you before he said it.
Deviation, he died in 1955.
Oh, did he? That is interesting. I must have got that wrong.
They went there to tell it to him, but he wasn't there. Unfortunately, he was in his grave. But, Derek, I agree with the challenge.
It was the sun, you see.
I knew you would say that. That's why I didn't challenge. I thought
but I keep my countenance. I remain self-possessed.
You hardly ever alter your countenance, do you, Kenneth? There are 18 seconds for you on Albert Einstein, Derek, starting now.
As a Swiss citizen, he was very fortunate to be working in the patent office.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Hesitation.
No.
No, I don't think so. No. I had to deliberate in my mind because I have to listen for so many things all at once. And there are 13 seconds on Albert Einstein with you now, Derek, starting.
He also wrote a potboiler with a man called Mr. Freud. It wasn't a very good book, so...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
It couldn't have been a Mr. Freud. I mean, it could have been my grandfather who was Professor Freud, but not Mr. Freud.
Oh, was he made a professor? He was Mr. before he was professor?
No, he was a doctor.
He was born a professor, he was
When he wrote the book, he was not, at that time, Mr. I think he was a professor.
Still call somebody Mr. if they're professor.
Oh, well, we can't deliberate on such a difficult situation, so we have to give the benefit of the doubt to Clement Freud and say that...
How often do you talk about his grandfather as Professor Freud? Have you ever heard him called Professor Freud?
No, usually refer to him as Christian name.
Freud.
Sigmund Freud.
Yeah.
Or Freud, yes. 10 seconds for you, Clement, starting now.
Albert Einstein died in 1955, and the astronauts who went to him...
It's already been established. I mean, he's going back over an old ground. What he's trying to do is to rub it in that I made what you call a pop-up, isn't it? That's what he's trying to do. Such, this is a disgrace. It is an absolute disgrace because we are all supposed to be working together, pulling together, loving each other. We're all supposed to be working in concert here.
Yes.
Are we all really anti? Are we all indulging with awful undercurrents underneath? It's wicked. It's dreadful, isn't it? We're part of the human race. Surely we go along the road of life together, holding hands.
Sir Kenneth, you have a point for keeping going on the subject without being interrupted. And Clement Freud has the subject of Albert Einstein with 5 seconds to go, starting now.
At the memorial service, men from all over the world flocked.
So Clement Freud moved forward very rapidly on that round. Derek Nimmo, your turn to begin. The subject is protests. 60 seconds, starting now.
I'm really getting rather fed up with protest, not only in this game, but in life in general. It seems to me totally boring that people keep assembling for no particular reason, interrupting the traffic, disturbing the police, to protest and complain about things of very little importance. I am involved with a protest myself against Albert Einstein not being called professor by Mr. Clement Freud, when he, like his grandfather, had the same rank. Now, it seems to me totally unfair that if Sigmund Freud has to be called...
Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
Repetition of Freud.
You see, they all do it. When they feel piqued about a decision or about something, they have to get back, as Kenneth said a little while ago. No, he was trying to get back then, not you. We don't have a guilty conscience,
protest, is it not?
Yes, very clever. You were protesting, yes, but you didn't say that. You have 24 seconds on protests, Clement, starting now.
What is so absolutely abysmal is that people in this theatre should be allowed to smoke. There's no reason in the world why, when one goes out, one has to put into one's mouth a filthy piece of nicotine wrapped in paper and puff away at it, invariably lighting it with a match before you do so. I protest most deeply against...
Freud's protest against smoking has taken him there into the lead, and it's a protest that we all echo in just a minute, because if you're interested, we once won the award as the non-smoking show of the year. Sheila, The subject is now yours. My radio. Can you talk to us on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
My radio is a source of constant joy to me, especially as I now live mainly in the country where the television reception is abysmal. I am tuned mainly to the music programme, which...
Derek Nimmo came in then.
Hesitation.
Derek Nimmo, your challenge was correct. You have 47 seconds on my radio, starting now.
I awfully like listening to my wireless set. I do find it an awfully pleasant form.
Kenneth Williams' challenge.
Too awfully.
Yes, there are 42 seconds for you on my radio, Kenneth, starting now.
The great thing about it is that it brings back to me those dulcet tones that I love to hear. I refer, of course, to my voice.
Clement Freud challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, once you
There's no hesitation at all. You have to let an audience laugh if they wish to. I am not going to talk all through their laughter and deprive them of my dulcet tones.
You're quite right, but if you're going to be...
You heard them, you heard them.
If I was going to be really fair to the rules of the game, I would have to give it to Clement Freud, but the audience obviously insists that I leave the subject with you.
Of course, their blood is my blood. All of it veins, British to the core.
Oh, yes, Clement was right. It was a pause.
They've all come to this island, draw sobbing breath in
Kenneth, one has to keep going just when you're clever enough to get a laugh from the audience, you still have to go on. That are the rules of the game. But
That are the rules of the game. That are the rules of the game. Don't you know where they pick them up, do you?
Kenneth, I'll tell you where I picked them up. King's Cross.
Oh, an unkind dig.
You're also unkind to me. It's all I can do to get my own back, let alone keep my own. The reason I fluffed then with my grammar was because Clement Freud felt he should have the award of a point then. He looked at me with such a way that I wilted, because I was going to give it against him, even though according to the rules of the game I shouldn't. But the audience want me to give it to you, and it was getting towards the end of the show, and you're trailing more than somewhat, you're going to have it. There we are, in spite of what you've just said. You have 29 seconds on my radio, starting now.
And one of those beautiful voices I ever heard on it was that of Stuart Hibbert, a man after my own heart, because of his essential neutrality in delivery. Now, this is one of the most important aspects in public speaking.
Challenged you, Kenneth.
I hadn't stopped.
I know you hadn't, but Clement has challenged you. Why?
Repetition.
What? Yes. I don't mind. Last time you were given almost an unjustifiable point. Clement Freud, you have a correct challenge and a point of 7 seconds on my radio, starting now.
My radio picks up station number...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
His radio couldn't pick up anything. Transmits.
I agree. His radio doesn't pick things up. He can pick things up on his radio. That is correct. Kenneth, you have 4 seconds on my radio, starting now.
Yes, Clement Freud is a man after my own and almost everybody else's. But I would say...
Kenneth Williams began speaking when the whistle went, and he did at the end of that round, gaining extra point, managed to leap forward from 4th place into 3rd place. But I'm afraid he won't leap any more in this show because we have no more time to play just a minute. So the final score was that Sheila Hancock finished just in 4th place behind Kenneth Williams. He was 2 points behind Derek Nimmo, who was 1 point behind Clement Freud, who is this week's winner, Clement Freud. You've enjoyed Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.
we present Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones, and Aimi MacDonald in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And as you've just heard, we welcome back Aimi MacDonald. And once again, she's going to try and pit her wits out against our three regular and experienced male players of the game. And once again, I'm going to ask them to speak, if they can, for just a minute on some unlikely subject, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card which is in front of me. And let us begin the show this week with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, can you talk on gross impertinence? Kenneth, can you talk to us on gross impertinence? I should think you can. Anyway, for 60 seconds, starting now.
A good example of this resulted in a gentleman being exiled from court when he said, obviously referring to the Prince Regent, to someone else, extremely loudly, "Who's your fat friend?" And it has been applicable to myself. I had the most appalling impertinence paid to me, or the dignity of my persona, perhaps I should say, depending on your proclivities, of course. And I've had pandiculation all over me. I've had the most appalling frogmosis, including...
Peter Jones has challenged you.
Repetition of appalling.
Yes! You've been appalled more than once in this round. Some people are appalled, but you're just appalled. Peter, I agree with your challenge. You have a point. You have 21 seconds on gross impertinence, starting now.
Well, these two words always seem to come together, so they form a cliché, of course, like diabolical liberty or filthy swine. You very rarely hear them separately. Now, what are we talking about? Is it the filthy swine or the other thing? I've forgotten.
Clement Freud challenge first.
Deviation.
Why?
He was no longer talking about gross impertinence.
Yes. That is, he admitted himself he didn't know what he was talking about.
The subject on the
you
card.
do see that
That's
if you
right,
go
gross
with
impertinence.
sufficient confidence, sometimes you can kid the others on that you're on the subject. Clement, you got in there first. You have 5.5 seconds on gross impertinence, starting now.
A fine example of this was when a waiter raced up in the House of Commons to the Prime Minister and said...
We will never know what that waiter said to the Prime Minister in the House of Commons, because here Mr. blew the whistle telling us 60 seconds was out. Clement Freud got the point for speaking at that moment. And Peter, will you begin the next round? The subject is fortitude. Will you talk to us about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, this is a wonderful quality of forbearance and patience, which, with any luck, comes to one in middle life, when one is about 40, appropriately enough. And if you have the good fortune to hold on to it for 10 years, it becomes 50tude. Now, this is something that we in England are particularly rich.
Aimi MacDonald has challenged.
Deviation, I don't believe that.
50tude.
Yes, that's not what we're talking about, is it?
No, we're talking about fortitude.
Yes.
And anyway, 50tude is devious anyway, isn't it?
Yes.
Because there isn't such a word.
Yes.
Even if you try to coin it. Aimi, you have a point, and you have 36 seconds on fortitude, starting now.
Fortitude has absolutely nothing to do with being 40. It actually means having great strength from some source or other, by something, and to something else.
Clement Freud has challenged. Why?
No, I didn't hear him buzz
Repetition
again.
of something.
Yes, would you press your buzz a little harder, because I know the listeners like to hear as well as
It's
Aimi
terribly
MacDonald.
difficult. One over there doesn't talk loud enough, and the other one doesn't buzz loud enough. It's terribly difficult for us.
It makes it very difficult.
It is an unfair advantage. Yes.
Very unfair. Very unfair. So,
And they look so alike, don't they, Amy?
Clement Freud, you have a point, and you have 22 seconds on fortitude, starting now.
Perhaps the most stirring episode of fortitude in British history was epitomized when a young sea cadet called William Carruthers Fortitude lay on the poop deck of HMS Victory shortly before a naval battle.
Peter Jones has challenged.
It's rubbish. Nothing of the kind.
You don't believe it? On the way
Not a word of it.
Deviation?
I can recite all the people who were on the Victory on that occasion.
A great name-dropping know-all.
We have to use...
I only remember Ardy's bit because he said kiss me to him, didn't he? I always remember that bit.
Yes.
I think that's nice.
Oh, we're so happy about that, Kenneth. Right, so, Peter, you have 5 seconds on fortitude starting now.
Dunkirk, that was the occasion on which this wonderful spirit was displayed.
Peter Jones was then speaking when the whistle went. He gained the extra point, and he's equal in the lead with Clement Freud at the end of that round. And Aimi MacDonald, will you begin the next round? What I really enjoy. Would you talk to us about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, actually, there are so many things that I really enjoy. I could go on listing them for about 132 seconds, if you like, but I won't. I'll cut them down to the few things I really do enjoy. The first thing, mostly, is to relax. I love the feeling of having worked very, very hard, come home and have absolutely nothing to do, and I sit in my great armchair and I think, what can I do now? And I sit there and I think, oh, I've got so much time on my hands, I can do absolutely anything. I could ring up a friend and say, come over to tea. Or I could ring up somebody else and say, why don't we go out, without? And then I could go...
Go on.
Well, she made 2 phone calls there.
And as she's already told us how much she does about 3 or 4 times, and nobody's challenged up to now, I'm going to let her continue for another 19 seconds.
We're going to be penalised because we were generous in the first place, are we?
Yes.
I see. That's your attitude. You're just drunk with power again. Eating meat or something.
And I'm at liberty to exercise it on Aimi.
You were doing all that stuff last time about give her a point and she lovely. Now you're hoist with your own petard, mate.
Aimi MacDonald, I'm giving you a point because they've been generous up to now and I want them to be generous for the rest of this round. You have 19 seconds on what I really enjoy, starting now.
Something I really do enjoy is ice skating. I put on my little white boots, I slip onto the ice, and off I go with the cold air. Wait a minute.
Get your skates on.
I didn't do anything.
Yes, you see, you said you slip on your little white boots, but you didn't put on your skates. But Aimi, it's all right. You said you slipped on the ice. So obviously, if you hadn't got your skates on, you would slip on the ice. You were absolutely right. So you have 10 seconds on what I really enjoy, starting now.
So I get up and I crawl back off and put on my skates. Then I do a great skip and a jump and I'm back on again, you see. And off I go with the cold...
Well, Aimi MacDonald skipped and jumped and did lots of things in that round with the restraint of the other member, or 2 of the other members of the panel, and with, of course, the help of the chairman. She gained a number of points. Aimi MacDonald, you have taken the lead at the end of that round. Right. The next subject is with Clement Freud, how I get on. We've had Aimi MacDonald telling us how she gets on ice. We're now going to hear from Clement Freud on something else for 60 seconds starting now.
The answer to this would be substantially different where it refers to a horse, a bicycle, or a bike, motorized or mechanized. Now, in its equestrian sense, how I get on is to engage my left jodhpur boot in the iron and swing the rest of my body over the animal in question, engaging...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
So boring, isn't it? Really rubbish. Get on, swing my body over this blooming horse. Really.
Terribly boring, but he wasn't deviating with the subject on the card, so I'm afraid, Kenneth, he gets another point, and he has 36 seconds on how I get on, starting now.
One of the favourite subjects at school for my son is to write an essay headed How I Get On with People, and as he doesn't terribly well, the articles in question are short, to put it mildly. In fact, a word, possibly 2, even a phrase, but never Never.
Amy MacDonald, you press first.
Repetition.
Yes. We were giggling then because Amy MacDonald was so delighted to get in, she wiggled her buzzer. And with Amy, nobody can wiggle a buzzer like Amy MacDonald. Amy, you have the subject and you have 15 seconds on how I get on starting now.
I do need a little help, but that doesn't matter. I sit down first, then I put both feet in the little things that you slide your feet under, and then the boat starts up, you see, and it pulls you.
And with any luck, then she'll be up on her skis, no doubt. That's what you were going to tell us, Amy.
Yes.
You surge forward, and you're in the lead. Clement Freud's 1 point behind in second place. Peter Jones is 1 point behind in third place. Kenneth Williams is 2 or 3 points behind in fourth place. But Kenneth, we're going to hear from you now on the subject of Isaac Newton. Will you talk to us about him for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, of course, everyone connects him invariably with the theory of gravity. But I think of the lines, the marble index...
Peter Jones has challenged.
I think he's on at the wrong speed.
Very unfair challenge.
Oh, no, I second that. I agree.
I'd be careful. He'll be start buzzing you with the slightest hesitation if you start doing that sort of thing, Amy. No, it was an ungallant challenge. He was doing... It might have been the wrong speed, but it was a good speed for Isaac Newton. And you have 48 seconds on Isaac Newton starting now.
He is buried in Westminster Abbey. But the bust in Trinity has...
Amendment Freud has challenged. Why?
He had no bust.
All right, when some
chest.
people... What's that?
He might have had a chest.
But, yes. All right, what we do sometimes is when people give a clever challenge which gives us entertainment, but obviously it's got nothing to do with the subject, we give them a point for that. We leave the subject with the person speaking, which is Kenneth Williams, and say you have 42 seconds, Kenneth. Isaac Newton, starting now.
Underneath bears the wonderful words written by Wordsworth. The marble index of a mind forever voyaging o'er great seas of thought alone.
Amy MacDonald has challenged you. Why?
She don't know nothing about Wordsworth. It's a disgrace.
You don't know what
Never have women on this show, should they?
We'll send you back to King's Cross if you're not careful.
What's her challenge?
We don't know yet. You haven't given her a chance to speak. Amy, what is your challenge?
Well, part of them I think is cheeky, first of all.
Yes, we know that.
Yes.
And gross impertinence.
The other one was, I think he's cheating.
Why?
Because he says everything so slowly and long. You see, it takes him 30 seconds.
You mean
no,
he can...
do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
He can say more.
He says in 60 seconds what most people say in 30, yes. What do I do? I can only, on an occasion like this, bow to the superior judgment and wisdom of our delightful audience in the studio here. God, they've gone quiet at the thought of how... Ladies and gentlemen, if you consider that Amy's challenge, which in essence means that he was going so slowly it could be called hesitation, you will boo. And if you think it was incorrect challenge and you feel that Kenneth was not hesitating with his slowness, then you cheer, and will you all do it together now? Thank you. A real gutsy response.
Lovely house, lovely people. Really nice people. I always think you get nice people with the BBC.
Yes. Kenneth's got it. The cheers are with him, so he has the subject still. 25 seconds, Isaac Newton, starting now.
But Mr. Isaac Newton in Longacre is another kettle of fish entirely. Now, he specialises in rare first editions, and I went along there once and I said, you wouldn't have anything on old Hassock, would you? And he said, well, as a matter of fact, funny you should mention that. I've got one here in the holograph edition, as it's known. I said, good gracious. Actually, nobody spotted that I've said edition twice.
Clement Freud has spotted it.
He repeated edition 3 times.
I can still only give you 1 point, Clement, I'm afraid. But you have 3 seconds on Isaac Newton starting now.
Isaac Newton, starting now, has...
Clement Freud was then speaking when the whistle went. He gained the extra point, and he's moved into the lead now ahead of Aimi MacDonald, who's in second place, Peter Jones in third, Kenneth Williams still in fourth, and Peter Jones, will you begin the next round on the subject very aptly after having heard from them so magnificently and so vociferously. The subject is this studio audience. Would you talk about this studio audience for 60 seconds? And they're all blushing and they're getting very uncomfortable, and a lot of them are wiggling about in their seats, because we're all looking at them with great intensity. Peter, will you start now?
What a happy, laughing crowd they are. And such a good-looking bunch. I can only see...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
Look at them.
Clement, I would disagree with you.
Oh, we know you would. You're all sucking up all the time. Lovely, yeah.
Well, you're one to talk. I would disagree with you only for the fact that they're a delightful audience. I would disagree with you as I think it is a very devious thought even to bring it up in the middle of the show. And Peter Jones, of course, got a point, and he has 55 seconds on this studio audience starting now.
I think they're very cheerful and must have a wonderful spirit, because they've been queuing outside for a very long time, and if I were in charge of the BBC, I should arrange for them to wait indoors and be served champagne.
Sorry, Peter. Sorry, you were challenged during that cheer. You challenged yourself.
Well, I didn't want anybody else to press their buzzer.
Well, that's a clever way. All right, Peter, what was your challenge? Hesitation? I quite agree. You have another point. You have 36 seconds on this studio audience starting now.
And there, in the foyer, I should have someone playing a piano, playing tunes of the day.
Peter, Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of playing.
Yes, they were doing too much playing in the foyer. Sorry, yes. Clement, I agree with that challenge. You have now 30 seconds on this studio audience starting now.
This studio audience seems to me pretty much like most audiences that we get in this theatre.
Kenneth Williams is
Deviation is totally unlike any audience we've ever had before in our lives. They're all so individual, a myriad hue difference. Oh, so delightful. I've never seen anything like them in my life. Never.
So, Kenneth, you have a point and 25 seconds on this studio audience starting now.
One member of this particular studio audience said to me I was very nearly late. I had to give a wee man a bowl of milk before I arrived. Nearly forgot, but just managed, left the lovely bus ticket on the mantelshelf. Never had the right fare for the conductor. Little altercation occurred on the...
Clement Freud challenged you.
Hesitation.
Yes, but why don't you keep going?
I was going to say the bus again, and then I realised I said it.
I know, but you might have got away with it. You've got away with so much in your life, you might have got away with that. Clement got in very clever there with only 1 second, or even a half second to go. This studio audience, Clement, starting now.
Hard of hearing serbo-croats.
Well, Clement Freud gained yet another point for speaking when the whistle went. He's increased his lead at the end of that round. Aimi MacDonald, we'd like you to begin now. The subject is Now I've Grown Up. Would you talk to us about that? You are grown up, aren't you?
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
good.
thank you.
Now I'm grown up, Aimi. 60 seconds starting now.
Now I've grown up, I often look back on some of my earliest memories, which I think is quite fun, really, if you ever do that sort of thing. And one which is rather sad was I remember delivering some rolls to my grandmother who lived up the road. And I had this tricycle, you see. And I used to go and collect these rolls on my tricycle. Oh, I'm sorry, I said it twice. Can I say it again?
Yes, say it again.
Can I do it again, I mean?
Yeah, do it again, but you won't get the subject back.
Oh.
So let's give a point to Kenneth Williams for a correct challenge, because we all know you repeated roles. Kenneth, you have 36 seconds on Now I'm Grown Up, starting now.
Now that I'm grown up, I realize the error of my past ways, and would that I could call back yesterday and put right those foolish misdemeanors of an undeveloped mind, and say I didn't really mean to do it, but unfortunately it slipped out. Before I knew where I was, this had occurred. No one can gainsay.
Well, the audience was delighted, as everybody else, that Kenneth kept going until the whistle went, gained an extra point. He's still in fourth place. But
of course, some people think I talk too slow.
I know. We all think you sometimes talk too slow.
There's nothing in the game about speed. It doesn't say you've got to rush about. Oh, no.
All right, so Kenneth Williams, will you begin the next round? The subject is My Appeal. When does it come up, by the way? Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, I think that to really give way to this kind of subject would be practically the equivalent to self-indulgence, and that would be a disgrace. So I will do nothing of the kind. I will say my appeal lies in many directions, including...
Clement Freud very silently challenged you there.
Hesitation.
No, actually, during that pause, he was saying yes to the audience.
It was more sort of self-congratulation than hesitation.
Yeah.
But once before, we've established this. He said when he goes slowly, and nobody challenges him for speaking slowly, and I gave it against him, he was speaking at the same speed then when he said yes.
That's right.
And I didn't give it against him before because nobody wanted me to, so I cannot give it against him now. So he has 37 seconds to continue on My Appeal, starting now.
Well, it's largely the result of people, the test...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation, he's suddenly going very quickly.
And we've already established you can go at any speed you like, providing you keep going and don't hesitate or pause or deviate. 35 seconds on My Appeal, Kenneth, starting now.
And these girls say, oh, when you wear those tight trousers and come on, oh, it really gets us going. Oh, honestly.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of ooh.
Yes, I don't think we can... Even if they are really saying, I don't mean have three ooh.
It's triple effect of My Appeal.
This time I must give it against you, Kenneth. Clement Freud has a point. He has 19 seconds on My Appeal, starting now.
My appeal was rejected in the coroner's court because they said I ought to go to a magistrate, as the previous legal gentleman is only empowered to deal with death or treasure trove. I therefore called a nearby policeman and said, this is my appeal. I am totally innocent. At the time, I was in Tunbridge Wells,
Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation. He hesitated before he said Tunbridge Wells, because he couldn't think of it.
So would anyone if they're going to say Tunbridge Wells, mate.
I think, Peter, when Aimi challenged you, you were slightly hesitant, but I thought not enough to give it against you, and I would say the same here with Clement. Not enough for a real hesitation. 3 seconds left, Clement. My Appeal, starting now.
I can give you the name of 19 people who saw me at 4:15.
I'm awfully sorry to have to tell you we have no more time to play Just a Minute. I say it very sadly because we enjoy playing it. We hope as much as you enjoy listening to it. Let me give you the score, by the way, at the end of that round. It was Peter Jones just in 4th place. Aimi MacDonald finished in 3rd place because Kenneth Williams overtook her just in the last round to go into 2nd place. But once again, our winner is Clement Freud. I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.
We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud and Peter Jones in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And once again we have our four most experienced and skilled male players of Just a Minute who are coming together to play the game. I'm going to ask them, as always, to speak, if they can, for just 1 minute on some unlikely subject without hesitation, without repetition, without deviating from the subject on the card in front of me. And according to how well they do it, they will gain their points or lose them. And Clement Freud, will you begin? The subject is aniseed balls. Would you talk about that delightful subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
I have a daughter called Emma who is just 11, who doesn't believe that plants come from bulbs, but thinks instead that they are derived from balls. And recently, trying to get tulips, daffodils and hyacinths in our garden, she came to me and asked what sort of globular...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, I agree that he did pause long enough to be called hesitation. So as I agree with your challenge, Derek, you gain a point and you take over the subject, and there are 41 seconds left. Aniseed balls, starting now.
I met Mr. Seed at 146 Berry New Road, Bolton, in Lancashire. Annie was his third daughter, particularly attractive girl, but she did have an unusual phenomenon. And this was that she collected.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
You can't have one unusual phenomena.
Had an unusual...
It should be one unusual phenomenon. Clement has a point for a correct challenge, and 25 seconds on aniseed balls, starting now.
Go to the local gardening centre, I said, and aniseed balls will do very well to get you the sort of plantation that you wish to have on the allotment which we rent for such a very modest fee from the local borough council.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
What deviation? We've strayed a long way to the borough council and everything else from aniseed balls, haven't we? I mean, I was frankly wondering what had happened to the aniseed balls, you see.
Well, actually, if you challenge on the fact that it was deviation to send his daughter to get to the gardening centre to get aniseed balls to grow plants, I would have said yes. The borough council owned the plot of land where they gardened.
What's that got to do with aniseed balls?
You may well ask, but according to Clement Freud, he had established in my mind a relationship between his daughter, aniseed balls and bulbs, which brought in gardening. So I think he wasn't actually deviating from the subject on the card. There are 8 seconds left with you, Clement. Aniseed balls, starting now.
If you race into a confectioner's shop and ask for aniseed...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of shop.
Yeah, the gardening centre. It wasn't a shop he went to. The gardening centre she went to. So I don't think...
Well, deviation then. Get him on back, because he just said you can only get them through gardens. Now he's in a sweet shop getting them. I mean, where is he getting them? The borough council, the gardens, or the sweet shop?
I don't think he's mentioned shop before. Have you mentioned shop before, Clement? No, I don't think so.
I thought when she was getting the bulbs earlier on.
No, that was the gardening centre.
No.
You do have to listen in this show, don't you? 4.5 seconds on aniseed balls, Clement, starting now.
You suck them, and they can be any colour at all, although the shade which...
At last, and the last 4 seconds, Clement got on to what we all know aniseed balls to be, sweets that children suck, and completely confused us all by talking about the devious things he said to his poor daughter. And nobody challenged him on that. So, Clement, you were speaking when the whistle went, so you gain an extra point for doing that. That whistle, as you know, tells us that 60 seconds is up. You have a commanding lead over everybody else at the end of that round. Peter Jones, you please begin the second round. The subject is spreading alarm. Can you talk to us about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, alarm, in the sense you mean it, I think, is associated with despondency. And the spreading of both these qualities, or whatever they are, was urged during the war, because they, through the medium...
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, he was getting thoroughly confused, weren't you, Peter?
Yes, I was.
You look rather
yes.
relieved, actually, to be released from your alarm. 44 seconds are left for spreading alarm with you, Derek, starting now.
Unlike butter or strawberry jam or even margarine, I find it much more complicated to spread alarm. Because when you do, you find that the bread is overladen with this heavy, despondent quality, which makes sugar and Rice Krispies seem interminably large. And one does find that alarm can be spread. I'm talking absolute rubbish and nobody's challenging me. Why isn't somebody challenging me?
Derek, you have been challenged!
The day of doom is at hand.
You have, before you started to spread alarm...
They're not very quick on the uptake, that's all I can say.
When you asked for the challenge, he very courteously came in. What was it, Clement?
A repetition of ha, 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 ha.
Right. Clement Freud, you have a point for a correct challenge, and there are 12 seconds on spreading alarm, starting now.
There's a lady who's sitting on the gangway on the 5th row, and if she looked under her seat, she would find a bomb ticking.
Deviation. There are no ladies on the 5th row.
There are plenty of ladies on the 5th row. I can see them, and there's one looking under a seat right now. So even if there's no bomb there, Clement Freud has certainly been spreading alarm in what he's been saying, so he keeps the subject, and there are 4 seconds left, starting now.
I therefore suggest that everyone gets out of this theatre.
He only had 4 seconds. If he'd gone on, he probably would have had you all out of the theatre. He's very good at spreading alarm. Clement Freud, you were speaking when the whistle went. You gained another point. You are way in the lead. And Derek Nimmo, your turn to begin. The subject, how to liven things up. And this subject has not just been thought of by me, because Ian Mester thinks of the subject before the game starts, and how apt it can be. But can you try and talk about the subject now for 60 seconds, starting now?
The best way to liven things up at this particular moment would be go to the 5th row of the stalls and extract the bomb from underneath the lady and put it underneath Nichols' Parsons straight back, placing behind.
Kenneth Williams has challenged you.
You know, I thought I'd detect hesitation, you see.
Hesitation? Well, yes.
Stumbled, he did.
What's that?
Definitely stumbled.
Yeah, he's definitely stumbled, yes. I thought you were going to have deviation for Nichols. There are 49 seconds.
You're known as Nichols because you're so mean.
Kenneth, you have 49 seconds on how to liven things up, starting now.
The thing to do is immediately establish new rhythms. Let the adrenaline flow, the blood circulate round the blood, and cry out.
Derek Nimmo has challenged. Why?
2 bloods.
Yes. I hate to have to say it, but you're getting a little bit too bloody.
Well, I was mixing up the phagocytes with the leukocytes.
Yes. But the blood
you must stimulate the phagocytes. Yes. That's the only way. They're the ones that rush to the rescue. And when you get a scab, that's all the phagocytes dying on your behalf as the new tissue builds up behind. Isn't that fantastic? Do you think they all do that on your behalf?
If you want to talk about the phagocytes, play Cutler Walpole in Doctor's Dilemma.
Yes. Things that make your ear curl, mate.
42 seconds with you, Derek, on how to liven things up, starting now.
My Aunt Beatrice Mason, who lives in Plas Uchef Avenue in Prest Aton in North Wales, is the life and soul of every party, and I hire her out to my closest friends who want things...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
Hiring out your aunt.
Yes.
Against the public interest.
And to his closest friends as well.
Yes.
I can't believe if I'm wrong in this challenge, Beatrice, would you please, Aunt Beatrice, would you please write in and I will try and make it up to Derek Nimmo. But at the moment, I can't believe...
I don't see how I've deviated from the subject.
Because we don't believe that you hire out your Aunt Beatrice to your closest friends.
Anyway, it has to be... We have to tell the truth now.
Didn't sound to me as though she'd liven anything up.
I think the
Anyway,
whole thought is...
advertising, wasn't it? Advertising his aunt.
I think it's a devious idea, hiring out your aunt to your closest friends.
Poor daughters planting their aniseed balls in the garden.
But you never challenge.
I mean, aren't we allowed to talk about our relations? Is that a new rule?
Yes, but we are not allowed to say that they are for hire.
No, that's...
Please don't.
All right, then, all right, shut up. We'll put it to the audience. They disagree. You are the final judges. If you believe that that's things that Derek was saying were devious, hiring out his aunt for gain is devious, which I do, then you will agree with Clement Freud and you will cheer, and if you disagree with Clement Freud, you will boo, and you will all do it together now. They all believe that hiring her out for gain is not devious.
No, so I'm right.
That's what the audience says. Yes. They're all... Yes. I'm sorry, Aunt Beatrice, I'm on your side if you're listening. I wouldn't be hard out for gain, but...
Pretty demoralised crowd we're trying to entertain, aren't they?
4 seconds for you on how to liven things up, Derek, starting now.
Pulling crackers and shouting, "Knees up, Mother Brown," gives enjoyment to absolutely everybody.
Actually... we know who's got the audience with them this week, but Peter Jones did challenge, actually, before the whistle went. Just before. What was it?
Well, it was a hesitation just before the whistle went.
I believe it was, Peter.
You heard it, didn't you?
Just before the whistle went, I heard a hesitation. Didn't you? Did you not hear a hesitation? You're prejudiced. Peter Jones, you have half a second on how to liven things up, starting now.
Well, like some credit.
At the end of that round, Peter Jones has got 2 points. Kenneth Williams has got 1 point. And Clement Freud, your turn to begin. What to do with a hole in the donut? That is the subject that Nestor's thought of for you. So can you talk about what to do with the hole in the donut for 60 seconds, starting now?
It's pretty difficult to spend 60 seconds on discussing what to do with a hole in the donut, because when you've said fill it, it is left only to discuss the methods of filling and the means whereby this could be effected. Jam is a very popular substance, but lemon curd or even cream has been known to be inserted into the midst of this mass of pastry before it is sugared and fried in deep fat. In the army, where people...
Peter Jones has challenged. Why?
Well, it isn't made of pastry. It's made of dough.
There's no...
Dough nut. Made of dough.
Yeah, amazing, really. Clem left himself open there to that, because he's very expert on all this food business.
Exactly,
He laid himself open like that.
It's probably classified as a pastry, but I think we give it to him because of the dough. Don't you, Clement?
Yes.
Good. I like it when they're sporting. It does help me so much. Otherwise, I get so pained afterwards with all the fisticuffs. 30 seconds on what to do with a hole in the donut, Peter Jones, starting now.
Well, of course, quite apart from filling it with cream, flavoured or otherwise, you can peer through it at a number of things.
Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
Deviation, you really can't.
Well, if you lift a donut up to your eye, you can peer through it, because it's quite a large hole.
No, it's... it doesn't come out the other side.
Oh, yes, you are thinking... You forget the round donuts that have a hole that go right through them. You can put them on your finger.
No, that is not a donut. That is a donut ring, which is quite another thing.
It's still a donut. Donut is a donut ring. But if it's not a donut, what is it?
No, I'm afraid Clement is quite right. The hole in the donut... Yes.
No, it is a ring donut.
It's a ring donut.
It is a donut just the same.
Donut rings, which are not doing it.
I think Kenneth put it perfectly well. Shut up, Kenneth. It's not when he said it's not a donut, it's a donut ring. Peter Jones, you keep the subject, and there are 20 seconds on what to do with a hole in the donut, starting now.
You can thread raffia through a number of holes in
deviation. There is no question about this. Nobody would go round putting raffia through donuts. Utter
rubbish in my life.
Kenneth,
you earlier on accused a member of this team of talking balderdash. You stood there and said it. Sat there, actually.
I didn't say anything. Peter Jones said, now listen, if you wanted to put a bit of raffia through a hole in a donut, you could have a wonderful party game there, holding it out and seeing who could bite the most out of it. Peter Jones, you have another point. And you had 17 seconds on what to do with the hole in the donut starting now.
And make a kind of necklace, which can be decorative and be very handy if you...
Kenneth wins a challenge.
Deviation. I've never seen anyone going around in a donut necklace.
I've never seen anybody with a donut necklace, but it's perfectly possible if you were kinky and...
Right out of your own mouth, you convicted yourself.
He has not deviated.
And you said kinky. That's most devious. I've never heard anything more devious in my life. That's kinky. He said it, didn't he? You heard him say it, kinky. What's more devious than that?
He has not deviated from the subject on the card, which is what to do with the hole in the donut. He's put raffia around it and he's put it round his neck. He can do what he likes with it, providing it doesn't deviate from the subject. He has 11 seconds on what to do with the hole in the donut, Peter Jones, starting now.
It can be extremely helpful if you feel like a nibble and want to eat something before you take it off.
Now, Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
Deviation.
Why?
The one thing you can't nibble is the hole in the donut.
You cannot...
I didn't say you could eat the whole.
You did establish that, Peter.
You make a necklace of the donuts and then you nibble the donuts.
Don't try and wriggle out of it, mate. Don't try.
You are to the subject is what to do with the hole in the donut.
He's right. Derek Nimmo says I'm right.
Well, Derek Nimmo's against me entirely through the show anyway. You were talking about the subject is what to do with the hole in the donut, and you talked about eating. So you were either deviating from the subject or else you were being devious.
Naturally, you eat the hole with the rest of the donut. It's not done to ignore the hole and leave it at the side of the plate.
All right. They've both chalked up metaphorical points for cleverness and rapport and wit. But Clement, Derek... I forgot the man's name.
Talking about
the fellow with the beard. What's his name? Clement Freud. He has a point for a correct challenge. What to do with the hole in the donut, Clement? 4 seconds starting now.
In the Royal Navy, there was a directive...
Kenneth Wim's a
deviation of the Royal Navy has nothing to do with donuts. They have rum.
He hadn't got going. He has 2 seconds left on what to do with the hole in the donut starting now.
Where's the Air Force?
Oh, Kenneth, all that happens if you challenge too soon before he establishes something to do, some connection between the donut and the Navy, he gets the extra point, he slightly increases lead at the end of that round. Derek Nimmo, your turn to begin. The subject, relaxation. Can you talk to us about relaxation for 60 seconds starting now?
To lie in a hammock on a May day between 2 trees with a good book, the sun above one's head, and a feeling of contentment is something which we all strive for.
Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
Deviation. It's something I've never striven for.
So you think it's devious when he says that we all strive for it? Some people... Well, I suppose...
Utterly untrue.
Well,
yes.
it is. In any case, many of us have actually achieved it.
Well, there we are. Some have achieved it,
striving.
some strive for it, but I think it's probably, if you have to be accurate and tough about it, not all strive for it. So, Clement, I must agree with the challenge and
you
the...
let me complete my sentence. So you'd have...
What was the end of your sentence?
Something that we all strive for, with the exception of Clement Freud. You didn't let me finish my sentence.
Well, after all, I did give you time to think of it, didn't I? Clement, you have 43 seconds on relaxation starting now.
Perhaps the epitome of relaxation is sitting in a theatre in London, listening to Derek Nimmo talking about lying between 2 trees in a hammock.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Deviation, that's not relaxing, it's boring.
Out of your own mouth.
Indeed.
Oh dear. Well, so what is the challenge?
Deviation. He said it was the
Not
epitome of
relaxing.
relaxation. I said it wasn't
I
relaxing.
find it very relaxing.
You find it relaxing? Well, all right. So we don't all find it relaxing. So I gave it against Derek last time. I have to give it against you, Clement, to be fair, because we don't all find it relaxing. Derek, you have the subject back. 32 seconds on relaxation starting now.
Another place that I find extraordinarily relaxing is a funeral parlour. I climb into a handily adjacent coffin, lie down...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Oh, this is disgusting.
It's quite...
Relaxation is positively gruesome, macabre, and horrible.
And it's
nothing to
devious.
do with relaxation. He doesn't go into funeral parlours and lie in coffins, and you know it.
You
it's
think
devious.
It's devious. I quite. That's the word I was waiting for you to say. 15 seconds on relaxation starting now.
One of the best ways to achieve this is to let a fair maiden rub you all over with gentle...
Derek Nimmo, I know what you're going to say.
It wouldn't be at all relaxing, very stimulating.
To give it to you, Derek, yes, I agree. The relaxation they refer to is what you feel afterwards.
Oh, I never knew that.
You don't feel the relaxation. You don't feel the relaxation at the time. It is stimulation at the time, whether it be massage or what you just described. Derek, I agree with your challenge. There are 8 seconds on the relaxation starting now.
Relaxation can be obtained by going to places like Frinton, where the sun shines intermittently, but you're able to go for
Kenneth
long...
Williams' challenge, why?
The sun doesn't shine in Frinton. It's well known. It
He did actually say it shines intermittently.
Oh, did he? I
Yes.
didn't catch that. I can't remember. My hearing must be going, you know.
No, you actually challenged on the sun shining, and his intermittently came out through the buzzer.
He's still got it, has he?
Yes, I'm
He's
afraid
stuck with his relaxation stuff.
2 seconds with you, Derek. Relaxation starting now.
In Kathmandu, there's a wigwam in which...
So Derek was then speaking when the whistle went, so he gained the extra point. Kenneth Williams, we're now going to hear from you. And the subject is making a spectacular exit, starting now.
You must build up to an enormous climax and then hold it for 1 moment, bow, and with an enormous... What happened?
Now, Clement Freud challenged you. That's what happened.
What's your challenge, Clement?
Hesitation on the second enormous.
Yes, because he was intimidated.
No. Oh.
Yes, he was,
By
by the fit of giggles that came over most of the people here. Kenneth, you will please continue on the subject of making a spectacular exit for 50 seconds, starting now.
Say to them all, goodbye, I love you from the depth of my being, from my bowels. I want your applause.
Derek Nimmo's challenge, why?
Well, honestly, if he's saying goodbye from his bowels, I don't think that's spectacular. It's just lavatorial. I'm disgusted.
Well, the actual lavatory was used by Oliver
Deviation.
Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell said to the Covenants, I beg you from my bowels.
Yes.
If it was good enough for Oliver Cromwell, Protector of England.
But he wasn't making an exit at the time, was he?
Oh, it should have been then.
He made an exit soon after, I can assure you. Kenneth, I agree, if you're making a spectacular exit, it's quite possible that you could do it from your bowels, so... You have 40 seconds on making a spectacular exit starting now.
Then turn toward the grave trap. Stand on that position, and when it goes, disappear with such astonishing effect. The audience gasp and say, "Ah, what a fantastic departure! Isn't he brilliant?" And the cheering breaks out, wave after wave of applause.
Clement Freud's challenge.
Repetition of waves.
Too many waves, I'm afraid. Yes. You're making such a...
You've got to wave if you're saying goodbye, haven't you? I mean...
Well, he was making such a spectacular exit that he was waving too much for just a minute because he couldn't repeat the word. Clement, I agree with the challenge. You have a point and 19 seconds on making a spectacular exit starting now.
The most spectacular exit I've ever seen was in a theatre in which a man painted in aluminium, what the Americans call aluminum, reared on...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition, it was the same word, doesn't matter. Aluminum, aluminium, it's the same word. Repetition.
Aluminum and aluminium?
Exactly the same word, different pronunciation.
Well, I think they're spelled differently. One is the American spelling and one's the British.
What's the difference between the spelling?
I don't know. I'm going to put it to the audience. I'm not going to judge on aluminum and aluminium. Some people think they're different. Some people think they're the same. Let us hear what our audience thinks.
I mean, are tomatoes and tomatoes different?
Look, I'm not going to make a decision at this particular moment, at this particular show. So will you be the final judge? By the way, aluminum is spelled A-L-U-M-I-N-I-U-M, and aluminium is spelled A-L-U-M-I-N-U-M. Ian Mester says it's the other way around. You can judge for yourselves. But you be the judge. Do you agree with the repetition which Derek challenged on? And if you agree, you can cheer. And if you disagree, you can boo. And will you all do it together, please, now? Absolutely equal, no points scored. The situation's the same. But you continue. There are 8 seconds left on making a spectacular exit, Clement, starting now.
The cow, which was watching from the wings, raced on and...
Well, Clement Freud cleverly kept going on a difficult subject right up to the whistle. He gained this point for speaking when the whistle went, and alas, we have no more time for just a minute, so I have to give you the final score. Kenneth Williams was just in 4th place, 1 point behind Peter Jones, who was a few points behind Derek Nimmo, who was behind our winner once again this week, Clement Freud. We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute, and will want to tune in again next time. Until then, from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.